All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving all honor, all praise, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Arachak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. As always, peace, blessings, and salutations to the tabernacle of David, though for elect, scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. So I'm watching this this video, Christians confront Hebrew Israelites. Then this happened. So another platform that Captain Tazariak, ISUPK, chose to join to have a little discussion or debate or whatever. And the topic of the baptism and John the Baptist comes up. And I thought it was interesting because, they asked, why did the Lord, partake in John's baptism? If you're going to basically water down the importance and significance of John the Baptist's baptism, then, why did the Lord himself partake in that baptism? And Captain Zariak is going to give a thorough explanation of it. And I thought to myself, if he understood that so well, then why all this contempt for John the Baptist and him not being in the truth? What is the basis for that? If you can actually understand John the Baptist's role. So just listen to this guy, because you're gonna see they actually understand John's role, but for some reason they still have him under. They still speak contemptuous of him. They still have a pet peeve, which is weird, man. But anyway, let's listen to this.
Baptize them. Because he was doing all things right. John prepared the way for him. So imagine, like, if you're the president, I'm the vice president. Okay. I'm holding it down to you until you get this. So my method of doing things, I'm telling Voice of Reason, Kadazar, I'm telling everybody, hey, I'm doing it this way. But when he comes, he's doing it his way. And then when you get here, you're like, no, I'm going to follow your procedure as I transition to mine. And so you come in and you do it my way, but it's expected I go away and now I follow up under you because you're the president. So when John is doing his baptism, he even says, there cometh one after me who's mightier than me, whose shoes I can't even latch. Yeah. I must decrease, he must increase. Yeah. He sees.
See, so they clearly know well. So he understands that John's purpose was to prepare the way, be the forerunner, right? He was in the wilderness, all right, as that messenger, preparing the way. And he used the water baptism, which was spiritual. When you analyze that, the spirit, he was the spirit of Elijah. When you go back to the time of the kings, Elisha, who had a double portion of the spirit of Elijah, he actually healed a man of his leprosy by taking him into the river Jordan, the same river that later down the line, John the Baptist would be doing his baptism from. And he healed him of his leprosy when he dunked him 7 times into that water. So that was all spiritual. All right. But anyway, he clearly knows well. He understands John's purpose. And that was pretty much what his purpose was. Anything after that, anything outside of that is irrelevant, and you really wouldn't have anything to say because John fulfilled his mission. So for them to still continue to say that John the Baptist wasn't in the truth, even though he fulfilled his purpose, his role, according to prophecy, it's how how could I put it? Basically, these dudes, they clearly don't fully have the spirit, But let's keep listening.
Christ, he don't want to do it. And then Christ says what? Suffer to do it, because Christ wanted to do everything right. So he goes, he does it. That's the changing of the guard. John's mission was supposed to stop. John really should have followed Christ and became one of his.
And now he's adding his own opinion, right? And at the end of the day, everything is going to go according to the Heavenly Father's plan. It's not about you and what you think or what you believe should have happened. All right, let's deal with that. Because right now, this dude is just airing out his opinion. That when it goes beyond what he already fulfilled as far as his divine purpose, you thinking that he should have did this or should have done that. Now you just going off of your opinion, and you losing track of the understanding. Proverbs 18. Let me get it in the NLT. Proverbs 18:2. It says, "Fools have no interest in understanding; they only want to air their own opinions." And when you in this little debating space, you tend to become very opinionated. You just musing upon a lot of different things. All right. And I don't know, and I believe they do that to try to, they put themselves in that space to try to big themselves up like they're, super deep. And they're trying super hard to try to be deep when that's not necessary, man. John the Baptist fulfilled his mission, and that was it. All right. Case closed. And Yahweh Shai, if there was any pet peeve, Yahweh Shai would have spoken it.
Disciples, but he didn't. He still kept his mission, which created the confusion amongst the people. That's why the people start saying, do we follow you or do we follow after John? And even John questioned Christ.
And he's still holding that same argument about him questioning Yahweh Shai, as if John, when this happened, John was locked down. All right. Shortly after Yahweh Shai began his mission, John was already being persecuted and locked down. All right. He wasn't out there, witnessing, all the miracles that was being done. He probably heard about it, but he was already locked down. So who are you to say, oh, well, he caused confusion because he still had, well, all we got to do is read Matthew the 11th chapter, man. Let's go there. Because I'm sure Yahweh Shai would have, if anything was wrong, he would have called it out. All right. You had the men of the Lord, even Apostle Paul in his time, he had no problem calling out men who abandoned the faith or, fell away from the truth. All right. Like when he named Demas, he put him on blast in a letter saying that this man, he loved this present world and he forsook me. He basically looked back. Yahweh Shai didn't have nothing like that to say about John. So this is Matthew 11. I'm in the NLT. This is Matthew 11:1. It says, when Yahweh Shai had finished giving these instructions to his 12 disciples, he went out to teach and preach in towns throughout the region. John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. So he was behind the walls when Yahweh Shai was out there doing his thing. So what was wrong with him going to get confirmation after hearing all these great things that was being done outside of those walls? You're not privy to anything. All right. It's just word going around. It says, so he sent his disciples to ask Yahweh Shai, Are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else? Yahushua told them, go back to John and tell him what you have heard and seen. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor. Now remember, John, he was the last of the Old Testament style prophets. And when Yahushua said all the prophets prophesied until John, and saying that he was the greatest prophet, and the prophets, they all desire to see the things that they prophesied, but they weren't able to see it. That's why you think Yahushua said to his disciples that many desire to hear the things that you hear, see the things that you see. Let me see if I can find that. Yeah, this is no, that's not it. Yeah, this is Matthew 13 and 17. It says, for verily, and this is Yahushua speaking, for verily I say unto you that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which you see and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear and have not heard them. All right. And he's talking to his disciples. You see? And John, he wasn't privy to these things. All right. You had the mysteries, Yahushua speaking in parables, and the Yahushua will go and elaborate to his disciples. They saw the miracles being done, the work of the Holy Spirit. So you can't really fault John. All right. So going back, it says, verse 5, and Yahushua, he didn't even get offended at them asking on behalf of John, whether he was the Messiah or not. He didn't get offended at all. All right. So this doesn't really mean that John the Baptist didn't have faith anymore and, he was no longer a believer. John, you dudes in the ISUPK, man, y'all lean to your own understanding a lot. And this is why y'all, you're missing key elements. Ultimately, y'all don't really have the spirit like y'all think y'all do. All right. But continuing on here, it says, verse 6, it says, and tell him God blesses those who do not turn away because of me. As John's disciples were leaving, Yahushua began talking about him to the crowd. So this is where he starts to give John the Baptist a standing ovation for fulfilling his purpose. It says, what kind of man did you go into the wilderness to see? Was he a weak reed swayed by every breath of wind? Or were you expecting to see a man dressed in expensive clothes? No, people with expensive clothes live in palaces. Were you looking for a prophet? Yes, and he is more than a prophet. See that? He was more than a prophet. He was more than just the messenger in the wilderness. All right. John is the man to whom the scriptures refer when they say, look, I am sending my messenger ahead of you, and he will prepare your way before you. Right? Which that's exactly what he came to do. And he acknowledged it himself before Yahushua began his ministry. That's why Yahushua came to him. Okay? You started a way for me, and now I'm here. Thanks for holding it down. I got it from here. That was it. I tell you the truth of all who have ever lived, none is greater than John the Baptist. This is coming from Yahweh Shai directly. Yeah, but he wasn't in the truth, though, because he should have followed him. Man, that's not the point, man. Neither was that his divine purpose. You acknowledged in the beginning that was what his mission was. That was what he was supposed to do. And he did decrease. He decreased until his time was up, when they came and apprehended him and put him into prison. All right. It says, yet even the last person in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he is. And from the time John the Baptist began preaching until now, the kingdom of heaven has been forcibly advancing, and violent people are attacking it. All right. And John was under attack. He was behind bars, man. For before John came, all the prophets and the law of Moses looked forward to this present time. And if you are willing to accept what I say, he is Elijah, the one the prophets said would come. So you're telling me Elijah, the prophet, fell out of the truth? Yeah, these dudes, man, y'all, man, just doubling down on your ignorance. Your opinion at the end of the day, it holds no weight, because Yahweh Shai, he never said such. So who do we? So when people hear this argument, who are they to listen to? Captain Zaryak or Yahweh Shai himself? Who stands on John the Baptist should you take? Yahweh Shai or freaking Captain Zaryak? That code of personality. It says, anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. To what can I compare this generation? It is like children playing a game in the public square. They complain to their friends, we played wedding songs and you didn't dance. We played funeral songs and you didn't mourn. It's basically we do it this way. It's an issue. Then we do it this way. Oh, it's an issue. We know how our people are. They're naturally rebellious. For John didn't spend his time eating and drinking, and you say he's possessed by a demon. The Son of Man, on the other hand, feasts and drinks, and you say, oh, he's a glutton and a drunkard, and a friend of tax collectors and other sinners. But wisdom is shown to be right by its results. Okay? So Yahweh Shai explained it wonderfully, man. He gave John the Baptist a standing ovation. So that's all we should we should value Yahweh Shai's take on John the Baptist. The hell with ISUPK, all right? A bunch of dudes who's operating in their own spirit, very proud and arrogant. Nah, man. So let's listen to a little more.
Got weak in the faith. John sent disciples to Christ, which he shouldn't have had disciples, but he sent disciples and said, is it you or do we look for another?
Why shouldn't he have had disciples? His ministry existed before Yahweh Shai started his ministry. So he already had disciples before Yahweh Shai came on the scene. What are we talking about? Man. Hey man, let me get this, man. Let me go here real quick. Is it here? No, it might be the third chapter. All right, let me go to Sirach. 3. This is Sirach 3 and 23 and 24. And it says, be not curious in unnecessary matters. Why does it matter whether John the Baptist, he didn't follow Yahweh Shai, or, he didn't become Yahweh Shai's disciple after he stopped his baptism? Why does that even matter? Before he had a chance to do anything, he was incarcerated. All right, he did not get to witness the things that they saw on the outside. So now you're just making your opinion based off of assumptions and, things that really, is an unnecessary matter, man. Because at the end of the day, he still fulfilled the Lord's divine purpose. Okay? Malachi 4 and 5, Isaiah 40 and 3, those were fulfilled. Be not curious in unnecessary matters, for more things are shewed unto thee than men understand. And we actually understand, man. We get it. And John, which was Elijah, he came back again. Now I don't know where General Yohana stands on that, but we believe. So if you hold that opinion, then are you going to disqualify the man who paved the way for the ministry that you're a part of now? Be not curious in unnecessary matters, for more things are shewed unto thee than men understand. For many are deceived by their own vain opinion. And that's you, Tazariak, that's you, Kaltazar, Yohana, all them dudes over there, man. And it's weird because, these other Israelite camps, they'll be silent when it comes to stuff like that. They'll get on us, easily and turn a blind eye to, these type of matters, And that lets you know right there that we gotta be under the sufferings of Yahweh Shai, because everybody, even that had doctrinal differences, they all was questioning Yahweh Shai or coming against him. Because he was rebuking all these cats. It says, for many are deceived by their own vain opinion, and an evil suspicion have overthrown their judgment. So these guys, they made a decision to say that John the Baptist was no longer in the truth. They had an evil suspicion because he didn't follow and be one of the disciples. No, the discipleship and them following Yahweh Shai and conducting the ministry, that was all around the time when John the Baptist was already incarcerated. So he wouldn't have had a chance to do anything. But this is what they're choosing to go by. Oh, well, he wasn't in the 12. What are you talking about?
And then Christ said, blessed is he who is not offended in me, because John then became offended at Christ. And then
he wasn't offended in the Lord. What are you talking about? He's telling those that were among him, don't be offended. Because you did have disciples that fell away from him at some point. He knew that there was going to be a time when they wasn't going to be able to endure with them, especially when they heard dark sayings and things that they didn't understand. All right, but John the Baptist, come on now.
Christ brought John low. He said, he that is least in the kingdom is greater than John, because John questioned him.
No, that's not why he said that, man. What he's saying is he's least and you're greater because you're able to see the things that you see that he didn't get to see. You're getting to hear, a lot of the mysteries. When he was speaking in parables, I just brought it out. He didn't get he wasn't there for that. Let's go back to that. Let's go to Matthew 13. This is Matthew 13 and 13. It says, therefore speak I to them in parables, because they seeing not, and hearing they hear not, neither do they understand. And in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah, which saith, by hearing you shall hear, and shall not understand, and you shall see, and shall not perceive. For this people's heart is waxed gross, and their ears are dull of hearing, and their eyes have they closed, lest at any time they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and should understand with their heart, and should be converted, and I should heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For verily I say unto you, that many prophets and righteous men have desired to see those things which you see, and have not seen them. So all these prophets that prophesied, the major prophets, the minor prophets, even Moses, all of them, they wasn't here in this time to be able to see and hear these things, man. So that's what made them greater than John. Okay. John actually got to at least be in the same time frame where he actually got to encounter Yahushua, who was prophesied of by all the prophets. All right. And he paved the way for Yahushua in his ministry. So that's what made him greater than all the other prophets. It says, and have not seen them, and to hear those things which you hear, and have not heard them. Okay. So that's come on, man. Because he questioned Yahushua, that means that he's least? No, that's not what that means. Let me, let's go to the chat. I know what that means, but let's ask the chat now. And then we'll close out. All right, Shalaki, let me reword it. Matter of fact, that's what I'm going to do. Let me just highlight it. All right, so this is what the chat says in response to that. It says the line comes from Matthew 11 and 11, also Luke 7 and 28, where Yahushua is talking about John the Baptist. At first glance, it sounds contradictory, but it's actually a really tight statement once you see the frame he's using. The key idea, position in history, not personal worth. Yahushua is not saying John lacked faith, righteousness, or importance. In fact, he just said no one greater had been born. That's huge. The contrast is about covenants and access, not character. What makes John great? John is the last and greatest prophet of the old order. He was also of the Aaronic bloodline, or of the Aaronic priesthood. But instead of being partakers of that priestly duty, he was the messenger, right? He could have boasted in that. It says he directly prepared the way for the Messiah. He stood at the threshold of the kingdom, but did not live fully inside it. John represents the old covenant at its absolute peak. Why the least in the kingdom is greater? Because once the kingdom of heaven is inaugurated, people have direct access to the finished work of the Messiah. They receive the Holy Spirit in a new way. They live under the new covenant, which we're not in the new covenant. All right, but the old way had been abolished, and Yahushua ratified the new covenant, through his blood. All right, but we're not living in the new covenant yet, because we know that we haven't been changed yet. Okay, it says not anticipation but fulfillment. So even the least person inside the kingdom knows what John only pointed toward, lives in what John only announced, experiences redemption completed, not just promised. It's about privilege, not prestige. A simple analogy, think of John like the greatest scientist before electricity was discovered, and the least in the kingdom like a child who can flip a light switch. The scientist, this is a good analogy. The scientist is greater in intellect and achievement, but the child lives in a new reality the scientist never experienced. Oof. Why this matters spiritually? Yahushua is quietly saying the kingdom changes everything. Status in the kingdom is not about fame or rank. But it is like that. It's like that among these other camps, with these, ranking orders and flattering titles, fame, notoriety. That's what they do it now for. All right. It says humility and participation in God's reign outweighs prophetic greatness outside it. All right. Like I said, John, he didn't get to witness the miracles that the Lord did. John didn't get to raise people from the dead or restore eyesight to the blind. He didn't get to do that. Okay. It's also a warning not to romanticize spiritual greatness outside the kingdom while missing what's available inside it. So, good explanation from the chat. All right. So, these guys, they know what they know. But when you come in this type of manner, you like this is why the Lord said he giveth grace unto the humble, man. He resisteth the proud. If these dudes stop being proud, then maybe the Lord would give them open up their understanding and so they can know John the Baptist's purpose and worth and his character. But it's like they're shitting on him. Like he had no significance, after he did what he did. Yahushua can give him a standing ovation, but they can't. So the Lord gonna humble these dudes eventually. Keep playing with it. So I'm gonna end on that note. I'm gonna give all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushua. And to the next lesson I say, Shalom.